A guy named Pierce Lyons. Pierce was born outside of Dublin, Ireland, which explains that whole Irish pub street scene that we've got going on. Pierce was born into a family of coopers, the barrel makers. So he was born into the art before he had his first taste of any of the good stuff. He decided to pursue that in his education. Pierce got a master's in brewing, a master's in distilling, and then got a doctorate in yeast fermentation studies, which I didn't know was an option when I was going through school, and it feels like I was really cheated in a big way. He becomes a yeast doctor, and he gets jobs under the two big dogs in Ireland. He makes a little whiskey under Jameson, and he makes a little beer under Guinness and Harp. So he gets all of his experience, all of his schooling overseas in Ireland. He comes to Kentucky in 1976. And in 76, we were facing a bit of a fuel shortage here in the States, and we were starting to add ethanol to our supply. We needed experts in the field of distillation, and Pierce Lyons is one of those experts. So they invited him over to Kentucky in 1976, just on a 4-year contract. When the 4 years were up, he decided he liked Kentucky. He liked the people here, he liked the environment. He had to make his game plan though. So 1980 is whenever he starts the company Alltech. Alltech deals with feed, crop science, animal nutrition, all that kind of stuff. You don't get to try any of that good stuff on the tour today, I'm sorry. This is more of a passion project that Pierce started, and it grew into a lot more. So we got into this brewing business, the fun business, in 1999. And in 1999, the founder's son, Mark Lyons, had finished up school. Mark Lyons was looking for a job, similar profession as his dad. He wanted to get in with a brewery or a distillery, so he came down to the historic Lexington Brewing Company. The Lexington Brewing Company here dates back to 1794, so they're a well-established place. First jail here in Lexington was constructed in 1795, which I'm sure was just a coincidence back in the day. Mark saw a good opportunity. He saw this place had been hanging around for a couple hundred years. He thought if he could get his foot in the door, start to climb the ladder, he'd have a place in that company. But the problem is the Lexington Brewing Company was going bankrupt. So at the time of him applying and trying to get his foot in the door, they were closing their doors for good. They were not growing their team, they were shrinking it. That's because at that time they were producing a hemp-based beer. It wasn't the beer that got them in trouble, but they paired a slogan with it: "This bud's for you." And there's a lot bigger company out of St. Louis who had already claimed to "This bud's for you," and turns out they didn't appreciate it one bit whenever they heard about it being used in Lexington. So that's what was causing sort of the end of the era of the Lexington Brewing Company. Mark couldn't get a job. He went back to his dad, Pierce, the founder of that global company, Alltech, and Pierce Lyons came down here, had a few beers with the owners at the time, checked the place out, and decided he really liked it. He liked the history in it. So he whipped out his checkbook. He wrote a really nice number on that check, handed it over, and from that moment forward, Alltech becomes the owners of the historic Lexington Brewing Company. First beer that we make was in 2000. It was called the Kentucky Ale. It was an Irish red styled beer, really good. Around 2004, he had a really good idea of barrel aging that beer. And that's what gave rise to our Kentucky Bourbon Barrel Ale. That's our bread and butter, it's our big seller. If you've not tried it, I'm gonna recommend you spend one of your little wooden chips on it today. That's the good stuff. And Bourbon Barrel Ale is what put us on the map and led us into the whiskey distilling itself. So 2008 came around, we were having all the success here with the beer, so we start up the Town Branch Distillery, and in 2012 we officially joined the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. And at the time of us joining, we were distillery number 7 to hop on. The number's now above 40, and it's just gonna keep growing. So that's your history lesson for today. I tried to make it good and brief for you guys. You have some house rules that we gotta go over real quick. You guys got some wooden tokens. Technically, you can't share those wooden tokens themselves, because I'm allowed to provide each of you guys a 1 drink equivalent. So 4 tokens are gonna equal 1 drink. But like lots of laws and rules, there are loopholes to them. So even though you can't share those wooden chips themselves, once you get a beer or a whiskey glass inside your hands, what you decide to do with that spirit or beer is none of my business. So if you catch my drift here, you can taste a few extra options than just the 4 tokens I provided. There are 5 beers that we're gonna pick from in this building. And there's 7 or 8 whiskeys and gins that we have to pick from in the next building. So tough decisions are staring you guys down today. The other house rule is we're an active facility, and on a Saturday there's not a whole lot of activity. Most of the guys are off, but you might see some forklift traffic. We are going to be crossing this live road here, so whenever we're leaving this building with a good buzz, drinking all the high percentage beers, look both ways again, hold hands if you're buzzing good. I don't know what kind of day you've had so far, and as long as you do all that, I won't have any paperwork. All that sound good? All right, let's hop on in here, guys. We'll talk a little bit about production, and then we'll get some drinks in everybody else's hands. Oh, they work the same. They work the same. Watch your step, guys. There's a few uneven floors in here on the grates and whatnot. Y'all can follow me up a little bit. Now nowadays, we don't do a whole lot of brewing here on site. If you look really close at our packages of beer, you will see that it's a product of Lexington, Kentucky and Grand Rapids, Michigan. There's a lot bigger brewery up there called Founders. We outgrew our little operation here, outgrew our britches. Bourbon Barrel Ale got so popular, we couldn't keep up with the demand. So Founders had a little bit of room in their line, a little bit of room in their coolers. We sent up our brewers, recipes, trained them up on how to make it. Nowadays, most of our beer is made up in Michigan. We still need this building though for cooking the grains for the whiskey, and when we do really small batches of beer, like in the wintertime around the holidays. So what we do in this room, at the base of the ramp, we've got some cream-colored steel structures down there. Those are crane systems. And the crane system is going to lift up a 1,500-pound bag of grains. The bag of grains is called a super sack. It's prepared off-site. It's already pre-mixed for any of the bases. So a certain number of wheat, certain number of barley will get mixed into that bag. Essentially, so it's like a starter log. You can just cut open that bag and get to cooking. So the first tank in the line, right underneath that ceiling light in the corner, the first tank is called the mash tun. And a mash tun is where you're cooking grains. You cook them in hot water. It gets flavor and it gets sugar off of those grains. That's the important stuff. After we've got flavor and sugar, we don't really have a demand, a need for those grains anymore. So the second tank in the line, with the big arm coming straight up from it, that is called the lauter tun. And lauter is a German word. It's one of the few German words I know, so don't expect many more German words. German word lauter means to clarify. So we're going to filter out all those grains. We've already got the good stuff from them. The grains go on a truck. We donate them to a farm outside of Louisville, Kentucky, where they've got all sorts of livestock. They tell me the animals come thundering up to the gate as soon as it pulls up on the farm. We just don't have a need for those grains. They still have a little nutritional value. So that's just a great way to make everybody happy. What you're left with after you get rid of the solids is a very sweet liquid called wort. That's your second German word. Wort is a sweet liquid. If we're making beer, that sweet stuff will go into the third tank at the top of the stairs. That's called a brew kettle. That's where we're going to add in things like hops and purees. Hops give you that baseline beer flavor. Purees can step it up a little bit. And then it'll get moved into one of these fermenters. Fermenter is where you're adding in yeast. For beer, it's going to be about a week or two of fermenting. And then most of our beer is barrel aged nowadays. So you're looking at an additional 6 to 8 weeks aging in bourbon barrels. So you're talking about a couple months from grain to your nice cold bottle of beer. For whiskey, it's going to be a whole lot longer. You're talking years from grain to bottle. If we're making a whiskey here, a single malt whiskey, then the bag we start with will be all malted barley, and it'll be all one type of malted barley. We will cook all that barley in the mash tun, just like we would beer grain. We still filter out all the whiskey husk in that second tank. But when we're done with it, we're not going to add in hops or purees to a bourbon. So what that sweet stuff is going to do, that wort will get piped out of the building through those big gray pipes. It'll exit the window, go across the street, and enter looking at me thirsty like. So if you want to follow me into this next room, it'll quiet down a little bit. We're going to start talking about your options. Mostly local, but we've got a perk having an agricultural company as our back. So we've got a lot of hands in a lot of different farms around the world. A lot of the hops come from the Northwest. They just don't grow too good around here.
So like Oregon or Idaho?
Oregon, Montana. Yeah, Washington.
Interesting.
Alrighty guys, so this room here is my favorite room on the tour because it's got all the good beer. This is named Pierce's Place. And that is named after the founder, Pierce Lyons. I never got to meet Dr. Lyons. He passed away in 2018. But I was always told he had a really nice philosophy to life. And his philosophy was if you were having a great day, that was great. It was awesome. You deserved a beer. If you were having a bad day, that was tragic, it was terrible, and you deserve 2 of those beers. So that's why Pierce put a bar in every building on this campus. So every one we walk through is going to have a nice bar on the inside. And he also decided, what the heck, I like this philosophy. So he put a bar in every building that the company Alltech owns. So even all the other buildings that just deal with crops and feed and all that stuff, every building's got a bar. So there's perks to working here. Now you guys are going to have to start doing some game plans.
Drinking on the job's okay.
Oh, we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm going to join you guys in a little bit. Now, before we get going with any of these beers, you only have 4 tokens to spend. You've got 5 beers lined up here, and you've got all the spirits waiting for you in the distillery. So you've got some tough decisions staring you down. Before we talk about the beers, I'll go ahead and list out the whiskeys over there. That way you can start putting some tokens back if some of those bottles sound exceptional. We've got a single malt whiskey. That'll be kind of the closest thing to a Scotch whiskey if you're a fan of that kind of spirit. I've got our Kentucky Straight Bourbon, our house spirit. I have a single barrel rye whiskey, a single barrel bourbon whiskey, a true cask bourbon, which is a blend of 2 different recipes of bourbon. I've got a maple stout finished bourbon, which I think some of you guys are sipping on. I think it's pouring up at the flight earlier at the bar. And then last but not least, we've got an overproof whiskey. That one is my favorite right now that we've got in production. It's the first wheated whiskey that we've done. Those are the 7 main bottles from Town Branch that you'll be sampling from. But once Pierce had his success here in the States, he took it back home to Ireland. And from that Irish whiskey distillery, I've got the 2 gins that we produce over there.
Nice.
I've run out of the whiskey bottles in the distillery, but we do have the dry gin and a rhubarb gin, which was voted the most flavorful gin in the whole country the year it was released. So those are options too over there. And at the very end of this tour, you guys are going to get a freebie. You're not going to get this whole bottle. I saw some eyes light up there. But you do get a nice cocktail that this bottle makes called the Bluegrass Sundown. It's our take on an Irish coffee, so it's going to be a nice, warm, sweet coffee drink to send you guys off on your way. It does not cost you any of your tickets or tokens that you got today. So that's everything that's waiting for you in the next building. So we'll run through these beers real quick and then we'll get to sampling if you want to. The Irish Red Ale was the first beer that we produced. But back in 2000, it was labeled as the Kentucky Ale. They ended up changing that to the Irish Red a few years after that, because that is the style. It's a good malty, well-rounded beer. Drinks sort of like a Killian's Red if you've had one of those before. Now, sadly, we don't bottle up any of this anymore. Now, we put 100% of this beer into bourbon barrels. This serves as the base for our big seller. So about a couple months ago, they decided they were bottling up about 20% of the red that they were brewing. 80% of it would go into barrels. But a couple months ago, they decided 100% of that red ale that we're brewing is going to go into bourbon barrels. But we still have a couple kegs of it. So if you want to taste the base for our big seller, this is 5.3% alcohol. It's a good, easy drinker. And again, nowadays we're putting 100% of that beer, none of it's making it into the bottle, it's all going into our freshly decanted bourbon barrels. And it's going to sit inside that barrel, inside a cooler for 6 to 8 weeks, and that's going to take it from 5.3% alcohol and crank it up to 8.2% alcohol, which is why this one comes in a 4-pack. 4 will get you there, you don't need 6. I've got a couple of cream ales, which are sweeter options. The vanilla barrel cream ale is made with real vanilla, so it's very sweet, very vanilla forward. I think it drinks a little bit more like a cream soda than it does a traditional beer. I've also got the tangerine cream ale.
Oh, wow.
Same base as the vanilla, so you can still expect all the sweet vanilla characteristics to come through, but we add in a tangerine puree, creates like an orange creamsicle type effect. Really good for summertime. Both of the cream ales sit at 5.5% alcohol, which is a lot different from the next one I'm going to talk about. This is our Imperial Milk Stout. It's the darkest beer that we produce. It's also the highest in alcohol, the strongest beer that we produce. This one's got cocoa in it, has sort of a dark chocolate finish to it, a little bit of coffee notes on the end. It's barrel aged like all of our beers, but the kicker with the stout is it comes in at a whopping 12% alcohol, which makes the best bang for your token this afternoon. So how it's going to work, these little silver buckets that are scattered around the bar, these are not spittoons, even though they resemble spittoons, so only put your tokens or your tickets in there, and I can count to 4. But this is going to be the only place you can taste the beers, so make sure you get whatever you want to taste in here, and then we'll be heading over to the distillery to finish up your tokens with all the
I'll
whiskeys.
do the other.
You want to, yeah, we'll take a vanilla and a tangerine.
Vanilla, tangerine, all right.
You got the one?